Hey, everybody, and welcome into another spring training edition of Locked On Astros. I got a special guest, Dawson Eisherloh. We'll introduce him in a second. Framber Valdez takes the mound this week, as does Hayden Weskeski. And there is a dark horse candidate to make the team that I've told y'all to be watching. Let's talk about it tonight on this edition of Locked On Astros.
This is Walker Yannick. You're listening to the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett Htownwheelhouse Chancey.
All right, everybody, this is Htownwheelhouse with Locked On Astros. Remember, we are your team every day. And to my right or to my left, however you're looking at us, that is not Eric the Man Huysman. That is Dawson the Man Eisherloh out of ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Thank you for joining us. I just want to tell you, before I get to a formal introduction with him, make sure you make us your first listen every day. Make sure you make Locked On MLB your second listen. And also make sure that you check out our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com today to get started. So, hey, Mr. Dawson Eisherloh, friend of Locked On Astros. I know you talk to not only me, but other Locked On hosts from your from y'all's radio station, Ross Jackson with Locked On Saints, and so many others. But thank you for tuning in. Tell us about you. Tell us where they can listen to you and the different things you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. So ESPN Southwest Louisiana, we're over in Southwest Louisiana, obviously, as the name would suggest. 1037 in Lafayette, 1041 in Lake Charles, which is right there near the Houston area, right across the border over in Louisiana. But we've also got a free mobile app, so you can stream it anywhere you want. We cover everything from the New Orleans Saints, the Houston Astros, LSU Tigers, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and national sports as well. So my show 1 to 3 every day. You can also catch us archived, which I know you guys always like to do. So no, but excited to do this. You've been on the show so many times, so it's only right I return the favor eventually.
No, yeah, definitely, man. And Eric is still in New York City. He apparently survived the subway, which is a good thing. He walked around New York today with his 2017 World Series champion hoodie and Astros hat, so I definitely commend him for the bravery. I'm not saying I don't think he had it in him, Dawson, but I'm super glad that he did. Now, the only thing he didn't do is he didn't go to take a tour of Yankee Stadium and go to Memorial Park and yell, "Who's your daddy?" like I wanted him to. But, that's okay. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to ruin his honeymoon or end up in cuffs with NYPD. So that's probably a good thing, right?
That is fair. That is fair. No, look, it's funny too. Like I had a guest on the show today who started going on the Dodgers. He's a Dodgers fan, and we had to get into it a little bit. We weren't even talking about baseball, but we had to bring it back to that. So sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, definitely. And someone said, does Larry Durker know that I raided his closet? Hey, man, I was feeling the spring training vibes because it's been so rainy and wet here in Texas. I don't know what it's been like over there in Louisiana. I know the rain's been kind of, if it hits us, it hits y'all. But man, and it rained a little bit today in spring training, but overall the weather out there is perfect. And, some people wonder, like, why do they have it in Florida and Arizona? I'm like, well, the weather's pretty consistently warm. It does rain, which is something that Arizona probably doesn't have to worry about. But speaking of rain and speaking of just getting the work in, we'll get to McCullers and Garcia in a second. But, we were supposed to have the debut of Ronel Blanco today on the mound. He was not there. I know everybody that's there at spring training was definitely bummed to not watch him pitch. But up next, the next 2 games on Tuesday, if you're listening on Tuesday, Hayden Weskeski takes the mound for his 25 debut. That will be televised on the Space City Home Network. And then at 1:05 the next day on Wednesday, Framber Valdez to make his 25 debut. What are you looking to see, Dawson, out of guys like Weskeski and Framber with their first start of spring training?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first start, I think the expectations are pretty tempered. Just get them out there, make sure the velos look right. Some of these guys are going to be on different throwing programs, right? Some of them are going to probably be farther along than others. But, with Weskeski, it's interesting too. Like when I first saw the way that trade was constructed, I think the general, my instinct was to assume Weskeski was more of a throw-in, but I think that was wrong. And I think, look, like there's a scenario in which a lot of the Astros plans this year, especially when you figure the fact that getting guys like McCullers and Garcia back could be thought of as a luxury. It's also with the caveat that you need some of these pitchers like Weskeski, potentially Spencer Arrighetti, Ronald Blanco, that don't have the sample size, right? That don't have the number of years of trust that we've built up with somebody like Framber and even Hunter Brown, at least having a bigger sample size than the other two. They need that anchor. They need somebody who's going to give them reliable innings. So I think Weskeski, in my mind, went from a throw-in in this trade, which is maybe just my own perception that was incorrect at first. It's like they need him to be solid enough. He doesn't have to be the front-end guy, but he's got to be solid for them. So hopefully, as with all these spring training pitchers, you're not going to panic if he gives up a couple runs, but you'd like to see him look like everything's intact, and certainly, maybe more so than anything, leave the game without injury.
Exactly. And I believe maybe these guys maybe push back. Maybe they go ahead and go with, Blanco tomorrow and the next two guys. But regardless, the next two pitchers that are scheduled are the ones we're talking about, just because we've got some great smart fans that are commenting in the chat log here. And so, Hayden Weskeski, I actually had the opportunity to talk with him before the season. And, he seemed to believe that the Houston Astros were going to be putting him in more of a starter role. Now, at the time, he hadn't been given like quote unquote specifics. He had just gotten in, he had just signed, he was just back into town. He was spending time with his family around the Super Bowl time. And boy, that was great that the Chiefs lost. I'm sorry, I digress. But I really think that Hayden was maybe underutilized with the Cubs. And maybe it was because the Cubs were log jammed and they didn't really have that spot for him as a starter, but he really pans out as a starter. And if you can peg this guy as your fifth starter coming out of spring training, that gives you a solid 1 through 5, where last year, what was the theme was injuries. This year, it's recovering from injury. And of course, like always, stay healthy.
Yeah, and I think we maybe learned our lesson last year too, where at this time a year ago, we were sitting there like, man, like which 5 are you going to go with? You got 7, 8 guys you could, roll out there. We weren't even talking about Arrighetti at that point. Even the Ronald Blancos, like maybe Blanco's a middle relief guy. Things worked themselves out. And, unfortunately for the Astros, the things that worked themselves out were a bunch of pitchers went on the injured list, some of which never came back. So I think at this point, whether he ends up being the 5th starter, whether he has to throw more. And then look, if things work perfectly and you get a healthy Lance McCullers or you get a healthy Luis Garcia at some point, maybe way down the line, even some of those other pitchers that we know, are on the back shelf for now, then you can adjust at that point. But right now, you cannot have too many healthy, reliable, major league quality arms. And, theoretically, this Astros team could have up to 6 of those right now and potentially the chance to get a 7th and an 8th back later on.
Exactly. Yeah. And just our friend Sanjay here was correct. And my speculation, I checked on it here on the MLB press box. They did push back Blanco to Tuesday's start. Then you have Wednesday, you will have Weskeski versus the Nationals, and then you'll have Valdez versus the Mets. So yes, that is correct. They will always push these guys back. Rain delays happen. After our first commercial break, Dawson, I want to ask you who's impressed you so far. I know it's only 3 games. Okay. I know, anybody can come out and have a 2 or 3 game, really solid tear. Someone made the comment, someone retweeted the second day in a row, ESPN tweeting out Alex Bregman's production. And they were like, yeah, Alex Bregman hit the cover off the ball in spring training, but did you see him perform last May and June? Now, like, Houston fans are dunking on Bregman right now, it seems like. But we'll talk about who has impressed you so far after we hear from our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to be in a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late rally comeback or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Once again, thank y'all for tuning in to Locked On Astros. We're your team every day. Make sure you make Locked On Astros your first listen. Locked On will be your second listen. And hey, if you're in the car, you get this really cool app called Audio Mac, I believe it's called, and you can listen to ESPN Southwest Louisiana no matter where you are. You don't have to be in Southwest Louisiana to listen to these guys cover great shows. You, RP3, Minch, Migas, who am I forgetting? The whole crew there at ESPN. Yeah. You guys do a great job there.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'll add in, too, if you actually want to listen live, we have our own app, ESPN 1037 Lafayette. You can search that in the App Store. And then Audio Mac, you're right. Once the shows are over, we archive them out, separate all the interviews out. So if you just want the Astros stuff, you can just separate it by the Astros interviews, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and you can kind of go look up, not to toot my own horn because it kind of sounds arrogant, but if you want to go listen to my spot, you can see, look, Brett Chancey right there, and so you can do that. I actually send that to my mom, to my dad, to close friends and family. They like to hear it. But Dawson, let's get into it. Who has impressed you so far in these first 3 games, this small sample size?
Yeah, the first name I'll go to is Zach DeCenzo. I just think DeCenzo's a player who I was pretty down on at the end of last year. And, look, it didn't go the way he wanted it to. It's his first cup of coffee in the big leagues. There were maybe some expectations. They played him in a couple of tough spots, right? But I was a little down on him heading into the offseason. But you start to hear these rumors like DeCenzo's a real part of their plans moving forward, And look, we've been trying to figure out what this front office is looking at and who the players they're fond of. And apparently DeCenzo's one of them. And so I wanted to see some of these at-bats and just see if I felt differently about him. And I did. Look, it's not like he's a completely different player, but he looked like he was seeing the ball pretty well. I think DeCenzo being separate of the memories we have from last year is really important. You know what I mean? I think you have to give him kind of a clean slate. And so, yeah, like you said, if we're trying to make something out of 6, 7 at-bats, whatever it may be, I liked his approach. And I more so just like that it looks like he, too, has kind of a clean slate about himself, and I think that demeanor change is going to be a big help. Like, he's got a chance to play somewhere. We were talking about this on my show the other day, Brett. Like, is he in play for something in the outfield, one of those corner spots?
Right.
If this infield gets shuffled around, we don't know if they're done making moves, but if this infield gets shuffled around, does he end up being a utility player? I liked what I saw from him right away, and hopefully he continues to swing a hot bat. If he does, then he's going to make this big league roster.
Because it seems like right now, Dubon's kind of being told he's going to be playing a lot of infield. And so I think they're shifting Dubon more of a mindset of being an infielder. And DeCenzo could be a guy, Dawson, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but if Chas McCormick comes out flat or Jake Myers just comes out and doesn't really impress, I mean, you could possibly put Zach in right, Altuve in left, and have Myers in the center, in center field. I like what I'm seeing, though, from the young guys. I like what I'm seeing offensively. Even guys that you don't necessarily know a whole lot about. Joseph Sullivan with the home run. Tommy Sacco Jr., who's an impressive player with the glove, comes out 2 for 5, hits a home run. And look, again, we know it's spring training, guys. We're not charting these guys Hall of Fame ballots just yet. But I think it fares to actually give a pause at someone like Tommy Sacco Jr. because he's a 5'10 infielder, middle infielder, was the defensive player in the minor league system last year for the Astros. And if someone like that can catch a bat, can hit 250, 260. I mean, we all remember Adam Everett. Adam Everett was an amazing guy with the glove. He just couldn't hit the ball. And so you want some of these stellar position players to be able to come up and contribute in the future if they're called upon. And don't forget about Jesus Bastidas as well.
Yeah, and you know, the way that I've tried to look at some of these spring training games too, some of these players you mentioned that like, look, some of them might not even end up on the 40-man roster. Some of them will, though. Some of them are going to have to get called up. Maybe their injury. Maybe some of these players are worst-case scenario ideas, right? Like it's probably something's went wrong if we see them. But if you have to give this player 50 major league at-bats for, let's say, an extended period of 3-4 weeks when you have some real injuries, like, can they hold up? Can this be
Right.
a player who gives you 50 at-bats? If they're, a pitcher, maybe it's 25 innings in a relief situation. Does their stuff play at the major league level to stay up that long? And we've seen some, certainly some players that they brought up last year that probably weren't ready to do that and really had their struggles. I think you've seen a couple of those right now that at least, let's say they take what they done in the first 3 games and you spread that across 20, 25 appearances in spring training, then you'd feel pretty good. If that player gets 50 at bats, I think they're gonna be able to hold their weight and we'll be okay. We won't have to, make a trade out of an emergency necessity situation.
Yeah, exactly. I just think at the end of the day, you just really have to keep in focus that you've got your major league guys. You're not going to see your major league guys probably for another few games. Jose Altuve, from what I understand, the first game he starts, he's going to be a left fielder. And I have heard that in spring training, he has been doing a ton of work outside, off camera, in the outfield. And he's literally been working exclusively in the outfield. He's been working on direction to the ball, his path, the way he cuts, all these things. And so it's really cool to see that, Jose Altuve's embraced this, Dawson. What seemed to be a harebrained idea. But then again, the baseball savants all told us they saw this coming. You could have asked them 2 years ago and they would have told you he was playing left field. I wasn't aware. But here he is going to more than likely, it seems like, to be the starting left fielder. Now, let me ask you about Shea Whitcomb. Shea Whitcomb was minor league player of the year for the Astros, I believe, in 23 or 24. And this guy has a lot of promise. When he came up, he had a rough time coming up. Is Shea Whitcomb, you think, is a guy that can make noise early on? Do you think we'll see him through the season like we did last year, making some spot starts here or there?
It's certainly possible. I put him in the same category, at least of my perception wise, that I did to Zenzo last year. Like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Greg Kessinger call up when that happened, right? When Kessinger came up, just felt like he wasn't really ready offensively. The other thing about the big leagues too, it's so funny, man. Like, if you can play defensively and you could just hit a little, like, you can stick for a while, like we've been talking about, like, make those spot starts. I think they probably trust Whitcomb pretty solidly defensively. He's shown you some versatility there. I don't think, and I know DeCenzo had that stretch where it was kind of disastrous defensively, and that's part of the reason I got all nervous about him. But Whitcomb has been pretty solid there. And yeah, like, the bat's been flashing in the spring. So there's certainly a chance, but it is interesting. Like, I don't think the Arenado stuff's going to be real. I know that's kind of been, already disheveled a little bit. It sounds like that was more of a rumor than anything else. If they don't make a move, is it somebody like Whitcomb who has to beat out one of the newer signings, Luis Guillorme? Is it one of those types of players, Brendan Rodgers, who maybe, look, if things don't work out, or maybe if things work out better for Whitcomb, DeCenzo, et cetera, maybe Rodgers and Guillorme end up getting DFA'd at the end of this thing. And maybe that's not the worst case. Maybe that means some of your young prospects have showed you that they're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And, to speak on the, I'll speak on the Arenado stuff just a second after we just take a quick pause. One more. That's it. So DeCenzo, good Lord, that was a way to flub that intro, Brett. Good job. Yep. Yes, I've been doing this a few years, kids. But seriously, so with with good Lord,
Arenado? Is that what we're
with
talking about?
Arenado. I almost went Goldschmidt. I looked up at my McGuire jersey and I thought Paul Goldschmidt. Good Lord. So with Arenado, the talk, like the rumor is, or actually the understanding is that the Astros did re-engage once they were for sure that Bregman was gone, once he was signing. They did call. As far as Chandler Rome has reported, there was no movement in the talks. But, you know, I would really have to think that if they're at least calling him, don't you think that they are really considering another bat? That maybe they think that it's not complete. You need that one more guy, kind of like, you know, not to get into the NBA because our fans hate when they talk about other sports besides the Astros. But, you know, I think the Rockets for the longest time this season, it's like, well, you know, they're that one guy away. And I feel like Goldschmidt could come in. I mean, Arenado could come in and he could really solidify a lineup 1 through 7, be here for 3 years, right? He's really not worth that much, Dawson. You're not going to lose that much. If this thing happens, I think it's going to happen mid or late spring training, to be honest. But if he does that, he's probably not going to be on the roster opening day because he'll still be possibly in spring training mode.
Yeah, so I've got a few questions. For me, I don't feel like it makes a ton of sense.
Okay.
And look, forgive me, I don't know enough about the luxury tax thresholds, but if the entire point of this Bregman situation was really all about these luxury tax thresholds, this trade with Arenado, unless you offload a lot of salary back the other direction, is going to put you over that salary tax threshold anyway. And so I think Arenado is a player who probably has more of his better baseball behind him as opposed to in front of him. I love the guy. I mean, I thought, look, there was a stretch where he was one of my favorite players in the league. I have a soft spot for third baseman. It's where I played. But I just feel like the offensive numbers have tailed off to a point where I don't think you're getting an upgrade over a player like you would have had in Bregman, which I know that's a hypothetical because you don't have him right now.
Right.
I don't know if Arenado is an offensive upgrade over Isaac Paredes. And I know the idea would be to play them, together. Maybe Paredes shifts over, plays second, Altuve to left, something like that. But to make all those moving pieces work and to potentially give a major league player back, which I don't know what the end up packaging would be. It doesn't feel like it would. It feels like St. Louis is kind of trying to offload him, but at the same time, they've got their hands tied a little bit because all the clauses that he's got, the no trades and stuff. I don't know if giving back a major league quality player to get someone who's going to push you over a luxury tax threshold. And, look, maybe he gets rejuvenated and has a great offensive season, and maybe he used the Crawford boxes to his advantage. For me, the upgrade doesn't seem worth the cost analysis in this situation.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I was going to say you could throw in Rafael Montero.
Yeah, that's
maybe pay for some of his salary. Maybe you could. I mean, look, I don't know. I did have a friend today in a conversation. I'm in a group text on X, and my friend Ryan basically said, with Bregman gone, but with Walker and Paredes here, he said, if you have Walker, Paredes, and Arenado, I like that better than I liked Bregman staying and not getting Paredes, not having Cam Smith, But like you say, like you want to talk about like return on investment baseball wise, not money wise, baseball wise, is it worth it? And so that will be the tough thing. But Dawson, strange things have happened in the baseball world, and especially with the Astros. It seems like sometimes they pull these deals off and you're like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're not going to get too far in other sports, but like Luka Doncic got traded 2 weeks ago. So obviously anything's possible. Nobody's off the table, but
anything. Luka it is called the Luka effect. So I want to talk about McCullers and Garcia. McCullers was throwing off a mound today in the rain. He will be throwing live BP, him and Garcia, progressing really well. Dawson, I have more hope in the promise that Lance McCullers is going to contribute this year than I ever been. How are you feeling about these two guys and what they will give to the club in your eyes?
Yeah, it's tough. Fool me once, shame on me, that whole saying, right? But I will say this, the one thing that I've talked about with the Bregman stuff that kind of bothered me more so than all of the contract stuff, I felt like, look, from a baseball standpoint, it made a lot of sense not to bring him back, and I kind of understood where Dana Brown was coming from. My biggest problem is the Astros have done something that's pretty special over the last 7-8 years here, And it's my personal belief that that kind of energy and that confidence and the success that they've had is not something that just happens. There's something that was causing it. The ability to have sustainable, consistent success. And they've over the years plucked pieces away from it. George Springer's plucked away from it. Carlos Correa's plucked away from it. Garrett Cole, go on, and they've kept it. They've still kept this core of winning. I felt like without Bregman there and only Altuve left from really that core that started it all, I worry about what's left. And so my bigger hope for McCullers, even aside from what you're going to get on the mound, which I hope is something. Elo today supposedly sat 89 to 91 velocity, looks okay, especially for a guy who's been away as long as he has. I hope he can bring you back some of that original magic that this Astros run began with. At least have one guy in the rotation in McCullers, one guy in the lineup every day in Altuve. Because I still think to do what they've done for as long as they've done it, there has to be something past just how good of baseball players they are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I would love to see Garcia get back on the mound. I mean, look, I've had enough to say about Lance McCullers, but the bottom line is none of us would want to be in his shoes, and he probably wants to be out there more than any of us want him to be out there. But some real quick injury updates, and then I want to ask you if you've heard of this dark horse candidate to make the squad who I've been talking about. Joe Espada updated the media today. Sean Dubin is going to return to Houston. He's going to have an MRI on his shoulder. That's definitely not a good thing for Dubin. He is a flame-throwing right-hander. Pedro Leon is going to have an MRI on his left knee. The Astros say they're not concerned. I don't think Leon was going to make this club out of spring training. I was counting on Dubin making it out. Caleb Ort, an oblique. He's doing light throwing right now, so that's not too bad. And then, of course, McCullers Jr. and Garcia, who we just got through talking about, apparently through bullpens today, will be throwing live BP, I believe, tomorrow, the next day. So, it's not terrible news. You're going to have injuries. We don't have a big guy like Giancarlo Stanton for the Yankees, who's basically going back to New York, with his elbow. He's got tennis elbow apparently. And so, this is the time of year when you don't want to hear guys going back home to get tested.
Yeah, and look, I think we even talked about Garcia. I probably should have got to him in that last answer. I've got a lot more hope in Garcia, I guess, just because there's not nearly as long a history as McCullers.
Right.
And it's always been interesting, too. I think Garcia's been in a weird spot. I don't know if he's ever kind of settled into a sustained stretch of time of knowing what his role was. I think when he's been healthy, he had, the quick rise, and obviously he contributed to some of the playoff runs. I'd love to see him just get back and kind of get into a groove and have a nice long summer. But yeah, I think from an injury standpoint, nothing too major. We've had worse in the past. It's interesting. It's probably better to know some of your guys are going to be out, knowing Javier isn't someone you're waiting on for next week, knowing the same with JP France, kind of having a better idea for the first time in a long time about McCullers' timeline. It's nice to have a timeline, whether you're counting on him or not, which I think, it's probably more beneficial to take it as a bonus if he pitches really well for you. Having a timeline is a new development, like you said. So I get why you have a little bit more hope than you have in the past. The one name you mentioned, who's a guy who I really think might contribute to this team and matter, and he goes kind of alongside with who I think you're going to go with your dark horse, but Caleb Ort's got to give this team some innings. And I think I really do think the ceiling is there for him to be, a solid seventh inning guy for you. Maybe I don't want to say replace the role Ryan Presley had, but start to press for that type of role. I really was impressed with what I saw with him last year. I know he tailed off a little bit at the end. But hopefully he gets out there and stays healthy because, the stuff's nasty and the stuff plays.
No, yeah, definitely. And, talking about stuff that's nasty and stuff that plays, Logan van W is the dark horse candidate to make the Astros squad out of spring training to make the opening day roster. And if y'all just take a deep dive into his numbers and what he did last year in Sugarland, it was impressive. And, because of some of his performances alone, I'm upset that I didn't get to more Space Cowboys games, but I've dedicated that I'm going to spend a little bit more time out there because it is so close. But Logan van W is that guy that nobody else believed in. The Astros scout said, hey, let's just take a chance on this kid. And he has done nothing but not just do what they expect, but really kind of just destroy the expectations in a good way.
Yeah, I was reading earlier too. I think Leah Van it was put a piece together about his story, kind of some of the things you were mentioning. Just one of those guys who fell through the cracks. Like was a reliever in high school, and if you go through it's tough if you're a reliever in high school. Most time the first question is going to get asked is why weren't you a starter? So he was just kind of always fighting for a chance. I guess kept the development going. He's got one of those funky deliveries, which I think it's a good thing. I know some guys, they like the silky smooth mechanics. I like a guy that's got a little bit of a herky jerky, hitch in his giddy up, so to speak. Right. But he's got a fun story. And you're right, though. Last year when they really allowed him to settle in, get some extended innings, and he threw a lot of innings and he threw well. I don't know if he's got the stuff to be a back end guy, but I think there's some innings to be had in the arm, and he's still young enough to where it's not like you're feeling like he's fighting against the clock in his mid-20s. So no, there's a chance. And right now, like I said, especially if, let's say one of the injuries, let's say a guy like Caleb Bort, who you're maybe kind of counting on is, maybe he's not going to be back till mid-April or something like that. No, there's no doubt. He doesn't need that much of an opening to grab an opportunity, I think.
So I harken back to the days of Brad Peacock, who came out and not only was a middle reliever, but made some amazing starts and really was kind of an unsung hero in 2017. If you're outside of Houston, you really didn't know much about Brad Peacock. And I think Logan van W, who has started, could do that. Let's say you get into a crunch where they want to extend that, roster from a 5-man to a 6-man, and they don't really have that 6-man, but they've got Logan van W. You know what, Logan, we're going to have you throw 4 innings, and then we'll bring in some relievers. We could piggyback with him. And so I think the sky's the limit with this kid Van Y. And I'm excited because a couple years ago when he was at camp, his first major league camp, when he was at the minor league fields, I remember seeing his name on the back and going, like, I don't know who that is. Right. He was with, Wagner and those guys. I was like, who is that guy? And then once I learned more about him, and Kenny from Astros Future filled me in. And so I'm super excited about that. Dawson, before we go, what are your thoughts? What are you looking for this spring training? Is there one player? Is there one position area that you're looking that really piques your interest the rest of spring training?
Yeah, and some of it isn't going to matter, I guess, as much in the spring. At the end of the day, he's got to hit when the lights come on. But Chas McCormick, I think, plays a pivotal role in the Astros plans this year. We've already talked about it. I feel a little better because there does feel like there's some outs here. There's some backup plans. Maybe it's a DeCenzo. Maybe it's a trade for a player to be named later. And maybe it is Altuve going to the outfield. But if Chas McCormick, I think the Astros, the way they handle a lot of their offseason, kind of acted like they were banking on 2023 Chas coming back. And so if 2023 Chas or something close to it does come back, then that changes what you're capable of. If you get 2024 Chas, then that's a problem because I don't think you can sustain a full season of that, knowing that the guy next to him in center field and Jake Myers is not going to be a plus offensive player. We know that at this point. That's what I think really, really matters. So I would love to see him get some good at-bats. He got off to a slow start, and it felt like he never fully got out of it last year.
Right.
I need McCormick to be better. Brett, I want to ask you one. I don't know if this is going to get the comment section rolling. I've got a hypothetical for you here. Is there a better chance? Which player has a better chance to be deeply impactful for the Astros this season? Is it Lance McCullers? Is it Forrest Whitley?
Oh, wow. Wow, that is a Lance McCullers curveball in 2017 right there. You got to hold back and really like watch the ball hit the bat on that one. Dude, I want to go Forrest Whitley automatically because the way he ended last year. But you're talking about two guys who have dealt with injuries and just seem to not be able to get over that hump. But then again, Lance has got no tread off the tires, really. I just don't know how strong the tires are. I don't know how strong the suspension is. So, can I plead the fifth on this one? I don't know the answer to the question. I really don't. But I think it's funny too. Like, is there a scenario in which we're talking about the end of the season, talking about both of them having productive years? Like, is that a scenario that exists? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough luck in the world for the Astros right now. Well,
for that.
And I think Forrest Whitley, because his stuff is kind of spread out over time and not so close together. Lance has all been the last 2 or 3 seasons, and Whitley's matured. He's 10 years older. He's not the kid out of high school. He's learned about overthrowing, all that stuff. I think Whitley stands a chance to be the guy to go out there and do something. And people say, see, I knew that kid was good. And I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but I think he's focused and he's ready. He's ready to come back. Someone said Glass is back. Okay, there's David. David is back. David, we had someone taking your negative energy, and so I'm hoping you'll be more positive this year. Tez loves to take your negative. I asked him if you were him last night, and he was like, he didn't know who you were. So, Dave, welcome back to the fold, my friend. Thanks for chiming in. Of course, you would chime in, Dawson, right when we're talking about Lance McCullers and Forrest Whitley.
The ghost of Lance McCullers, the ghost of Forrest Whitley. One of them's going to make an appearance this year.
That's right. Well, hey, man, Dawson, thank you so much for tuning in. Or thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Dawson, for sitting in with me. This has been great, man. We'll definitely have to get you back on and return the favor. Y'all make sure y'all check them out. Dawson, one more time, tell everybody where they can find your channel and the different shows that you're a part of so they can be listening to those as well.
Yeah, so it's ESPN_SWLA on YouTube, the ESPN Southwest Louisiana app. We stream live my show, The Lowdown, every day, weekdays, 1 to 3 p.m. Central. You can follow me on Twitter at Eisherloh_Dawson. I know that's a tough name. It's on the screen there, EISERLOH. But yeah, no, come hang out. It'll be exciting. We were at Minute Maid last year for opening day. Really enjoyed doing that. And we broadcast all the games as well. So if you happen to be over across the border there, right near the Texas state line in Lake Charles area, you can catch Astros baseball on our station in addition to all the sports talk that we do on a daily basis.
Man, and last night I did not say Lake Charles. I said Lafayette and Fayetteville. I was like, what the heck? I was like, oh my gosh, I probably shouldn't have outed myself since I'm sure you got some Louisiana people listening. I totally butchered that last night, but I knew immediately I had made a mistake. So y'all, thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you check out all the action. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like and comment on every episode. And again, so Blanco's going tomorrow, then Weskeski on Wednesday, then Framber Valdez on Thursday, and Tuesday's game tomorrow will be on Space City Home Network. So for myself, Eric the Man Huysman, who is still in New York surviving, and our guy, our new friend of the show, Dawson Eisherloh. That's right. We've got Locked on Astros wrapped up. Dawson, thank you. Y'all have a good one. You guys and girls are the real MVPs. You are the reason why we do what we do. Y'all have a good one. And as always, go Stros. We're out. Good job, Dawson.
Appreciate it, buddy.